gotta quit Circuit City. I think that's unrelated. They're like, guy.
At 20%. Mine's at 5. No.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We are going to give just a couple more minutes to let everybody who registered log in. So we'll get started here in just a second. All right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Looks like we've got about 30 people on the line right now. So welcome everyone to our, I think this is our 4th or 5th social hour that we've done. And we're really excited to have you all join us today. We're going to be talking about restaurants reopening and get updates from some people that we heard from last week and talk to some folks that are reopening this week or are preparing to reopen. And then also just talk about what's next and what that looks like for everybody in different parts of the country and at restaurants that we have here today. I'm Lisa Tevis. I'm the hotel marketing manager at Triple Seat, and it looks like we actually have a handful of other Triple Seat folks on the call. So I'd love to just have everybody quickly introduce themselves and share what they do and maybe where they're coming from.
I can start. So I'm Rachel Mazzola, and I am the event manager at Triple Seat, and I'm located in Boston.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chelsea Langner. I am the West Coast account manager for Triple Seat, and I am based in Las Vegas.
I'm Leita Youngren. I'm the VP of Marketing at Triple Seat, and I am just outside New York City in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Hi, I'm Azure Collier. I'm the content marketing director at Triple Seat. I am in Brooklyn, New York.
I'm Katie. I'm part of the sales team, and I'm in Atlanta.
Yeah, and then I jump in.
Yeah, I usually commute to Concord. My mileage has been way down.
Awesome. Cool.
Drew got cut off. That's our COO, Drew Pierce.
All right, so we'll jump right in today. We wanted to kick off the conversation with talking about restaurants or venues that have reopened recently and how it's going. And we'd love to hear from as many of you as possible. So if you have anything to share or if you have questions, feel free to just jump right in. You're able to unmute yourself on the bottom left side of the screen, and you can also always use the chat.
Yeah, it's I've got my thing. It's lower. It's down to like 243.
And you can also use the chat function at the bottom too if you just want to type in a question or share anything via chat. So we'll be monitoring that. When you do share, be sure to let us know who you are. Just give a quick intro, maybe who you're with or who you were previously with and where you're coming from, just so anyone else who's on today that's nearby knows. And yeah, with that, we can just go ahead and get started. So last week we talked about how, I think last week maybe we were like 13 or 14 states that were starting to reopen. And as of yesterday, over half of the country has actually opened up some aspects of business and lifted some of the shelter-in-place orders. So for a lot of people, that means that restaurants and a lot of small businesses are starting to either plan to reopen or have opened their doors back up in some capacity. So we actually have a poll that we want to kick off with today, just to see how many people have reopened or are planning to, and kind of which group everyone on the call falls into. So while you guys answer that, I'll share what it looked like last week so we can kind of see how the results are different. Last week, only 6% of the folks who joined our social hour had already reopened. 9% were opening in 1 to 2 weeks. 12% were opening in 3 to 4 weeks, so about a month out. And then over 50%, 66% of the people didn't know when they were going to reopen. So I'm very curious to see how that's changed in just a week's time.
Okay, I think most people have answered it, so cool.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. So it looks like 16% have already opened. So definitely would love to hear from anybody on the call who is open and how that's going. People, 20% are opening in the next week, 4% in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then 8% in sometime in June. Still over half are not sure. Makes sense. So yeah, some things that we just want to open up the floor for conversation around for anybody that has opened their business back up. What does that look like right now? Like, what steps did you take to get there, and how has dining service changed? How's your menu changed? What can you kind of share with the group about that? Let's see. I know that
Lisa, do you want me to jump on?
yeah, I was just gonna, I'm scrolling through the page just to see where you were there, Holly. Yeah, we'd love to hear how it's been going for you guys in Tennessee.
So for those of you that were on the call last week, I hijacked this video conference with all your questions, and y'all have been awesome. I've emailed a bunch of you on the phases and template I was using, and our mayor's detailed video conference that happened last week. This morning was announced that Nashville is, Davidson County, is officially opening in phase 1 on Monday. So that brings pretty much all of Tennessee, other than I think 2 or 3 counties right now, open. The stores that have been open are doing very well. We're getting very good publicity and comments from guests. I've had one of my vendors that has been in one of our restaurants like 5 times in the past 7 days because it's close to her house and she's happy she could get out, and sends me pictures of her food all the time. So we're finding that what we were doing when we were doing takeout, as far as like to-go packs and large group, trying to deliver to neighborhoods, has really died down. A lot of people are wanting it now because people are starting to go out, the people that feel comfortable. The people that aren't are still doing curbside, which we're offering. When we open our Nashville stores, we are still going to open on curbside and take out, so that those that still don't feel comfortable going out can still get our food that way. The mayor of the mayor of Davidson County is recommending that everybody wear masks. So I'm interested to see next week how that goes. All of our staff will obviously be wearing them, but I'm interested to see as far as the clientele. One of the biggest challenges I've had this week, now that some of our stores are open, our clients for the stores that are open want to do something, and they want to do something in the next month. And I've had, one bride where I still can't tell her if we're going to be able to do her event because we're going in phases, and each phase is a little bit larger, and we still don't know if the rest of Tennessee will start in phase 2 next week. And phase 2 would allow groups of 50 or less. So I'm still kind of having to, play around with that, where it's like, I don't have a crystal ball. This is where we're at. And we're seeing some people that are still canceling or rescheduling, and others that are like, let's go, let's do this. So it's kind of been a little battle right now, with, just waiting and, hearing. So you get excited when you hear, yes, we're at a phase, but you just don't know how long you're going to be in that phase, and it makes it really difficult for events.
Holly,
Yes.
Marissa from Zuma. I was on the call you were on last week.
Hi.
Question, because you had a lot of really great tips on contactless payment and just ways that your restaurant was doing things to make it easy for your guests. I've heard a lot of guests who walk in, and in New York City and the Northeast, for the most part, masks have been required. Obviously, nobody is really opening here except for maybe some phase 1 is starting in a few weeks in upstate New York. However, with face masks starting to be required for you in Tennessee, has your team started thinking through when the guests arrive and they have to take those masks off, where do they get placed? I've heard some really interesting brown paper bags, plates that they take with them. And I mean, it runs the gamut. So I'd be really interested if you or anybody else on the call has any recommendations, because I think masks are going to be part of that new normal that continue throughout a dining experience, which could be very odd as well.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really talked about that. I mean, because it's not mandatory, it's required, it's just recommended. I think it's going to be based on them. But what I've been doing personally, because I have been going to my restaurant and eating, so when I take it off, I've actually been just folding it in half. So the place that my mouth is at isn't getting contaminated by anything else, and then just pick it back up and do it that way. But I haven't heard of anything. I'd love to hear if anybody else has heard what other places are requiring.
Yeah, the other thing I've actually seen, it wasn't at a restaurant, it was actually at like a garden store that's in my neighborhood, but they're also requiring masks for anyone who came in to shop. They're actually selling masks for $1 at the front of the shop. And, similar to restaurants, some restaurants are requiring like reservations or calling ahead to reserve your space if they're at limited capacity. And so that was the interesting thing. They just had like some handmade cloth masks that they were selling for pretty cheap, but that way it ensured that people were actually wearing masks when they were in there.
I did hear one of the things that Nashville's doing is our health department is giving out masks for those that need them. So the service industry people that maybe can't afford it, we're trying to give them to our staff. It's just a matter of how many we can get. We're at the point right now where everybody's getting one, kind of like shirts, but we don't have them for them to buy because we don't have enough right now. So we're tapping into that and trying to figure that out on that side of it.
And Holly, how many people on your staff are coming back? Did you bring back like only a certain percentage of staff, or what does that look like for your restaurants?
We're doing it in waves. So we're doing it in waves based on seniority. And so for most of the stores, we've already brought a good percentage back. We've had some that just don't feel comfortable yet, and that's okay. We have until like the end of June to bring them back. And we have some that, we have a couple that have some work on the side that they're like, you know what, we're good right now. Like, let other people get their jobs back and we'll come back when it's time. Because we can't offer them hours that we used to, because we're not, we're doing regular dining, but, on a busy Saturday when we needed 10 staff members, we need like half of that right now.
Yeah.
So the ones that are willing to come back, we've got them back. We really haven't had a lot of pushback, which is, I was surprised. I thought we would have more. And yeah, I'll be more involved this week coming up with Nashville stores opening, because those are the stores that I'm based in. So I'll have more feedback if we do this next week.
Yeah. Chantal, did you have something to share there too?
Yeah, actually. So we opened on Friday, of all days of the week for them to let us open, right? On a Friday. So last week we went into a scramble, and I mentioned it last week that we decided we were going to take measures a little farther and really over prepare. So we brought in a team that helped build the restaurants, and they actually put up plexiglass between every booth. And then, although this is funny as hell, we went out and bought PVC piping, and all the employees, we brought everybody in and paid them an hourly wage to build these, funky partitions. And we went out and got clear shower curtains, really clear ones, nice ones. And we connected them to these, and we partitioned off sections so that tables that we that we could use to keep our 25% number going. If we had that partition and it was less than 6 feet, we were okay. So there's a lot of plexiglass in all of our restaurants right now, which is really funny, but we're getting all kinds of great comments from the guests saying, thank you for going the extra mile. You know, we don't require a mask in the restaurants, but 95% of the guests that are coming in are wearing them, even outside on our large patios. And I mean, the one thing I think that I am concerned about is that we've not put anybody on furlough or laid anybody off. We've had the gods have been smiling on us. Our delivery and our to-go business went through the roof. And so we've managed to keep everybody employed. And given them extra cool little jobs to do just to keep them employed. We have people making masks for all of our employees. You know, we have like 450 employees. So, you know, and we're giving them away to people. So anything we can do to keep the employees going. My concern at this point, and I don't know if anybody can speak to this, is some people are deciding to go on unemployment because their hours have been cut. Now, I don't know if you guys are in the same situation, but some of these employees are making more money on unemployment than they would be in the restaurant. And so for the next 13 weeks, we've got people who have said, it's easier for me to stay on unemployment than go back to work. And so, you know, and it has to be framed delicately, but with etiquette and diplomacy. But in some ways we have to say, guys, we're here supporting you. We need you to come support us now. And if you can't, we understand, but we have to fill that position. And because there are so many that are going to be out of a job when business picks back up. I mean, we already have people calling us from other restaurant groups looking for jobs. So I guess for me, the sad part is that there are some really great team members that we may lose because of that scenario. Any thoughts on that, ladies? Gentlemen, too?
I was under the impression that if you offer them their job back and they decide not to take it, they are still eligible for the bonus part of it, the stimulus part of it, but not the state. So they actually lose some of that if they decide not to come back. I could be wrong on that, but I thought that's what I had heard.
I think you're right, Holly. It's an unemployment thing because the number one question they ask you is, were you willing and able to work? Were you offered to work? So I think that's going to be super tricky for people going back, and New York's not even back yet, but anybody who's getting unemployment plus that stimulus, 1000% is going to make more money than when we actually get to open, and we're opening at 25%. They're not going to want to do that.
Well, one of the things we're offering is for the first, I think it's either 30 or 60 days, we're actually paying them $10 an hour.
I'm sorry. Someone's sweet dog is barking. I missed what you said, Holly.
It might have been my dogs. My dogs are evil today. It's either the first 30 or 60 days, but we're actually offering them $10 an hour versus the $213 that they get, because we know the tips are going to be less than it normally is.
Yeah.
So that might be something that y'all could think about, is you pay them a little bit more hourly to get them to come back.
We actually are paying them a lot more hourly right now to get them.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm glad you're on that same thought pattern. That's what we did. The only other thing that I can say is that unlike Holly, our delivery and to-go business is still insane. In fact, it's really put the ball in front of us a year earlier before we wanted it, but to really establish a much larger and more mainstream to-go and delivery service. So, you know, there's nothing like putting a fire under your butt to make you create a department, right? So we've been working diligently on that. And so that's a really positive thing that's going to come out of that for us. The thing that we've been struggling with and we're waiting by our fingernails to hear about is what's going to happen with alcohol after this whole thing is over. Our margarita kits that we're selling, I cannot tell you the business we're getting out of margarita kits. It's insane. So we've come up with this really cool way to package them and market them. But those little sealed containers and the different size bottles that we have to adhere to, and the special security tape on containers, it's quite extensive, and I'm looking forward to seeing how all that pans out. If anybody has any insight, I'd love to hear about that as well.
Yeah, is there anybody else who's currently in a state that's open, or your restaurant's opened, and what's that looking like for you?
Arguably very similar in size.
Okay, we'll move on if no one else wants to jump in right there. But yeah, I think that's really interesting, Chantel, that you shared that. It's really popular in Georgia too. I think within like the second week of shelter in place, they started allowing to-go alcohol drinks, and that skyrocketed in popularity. So I can attest to getting some margaritas myself. So in terms of whether you're reopening now and you're kind of in the process of seeing how that goes, or you're preparing, this has come up on some previous social hours as well, but I know that it's always an evolving strategy. How is everybody staying in touch with their teams, and how is everybody staying in touch with guests to let people know what your plan is, what you're offering? Is it social media? Is it by sending emails? Like, what have you guys seen that's worked really well and maybe can share on the call? Or if you are still trying to figure that out, like, what questions do you have for the group?
I can share what we've been doing at Stars and Strikes if you'd like.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
We open tomorrow, 9 of our locations, and then our Tennessee location will open on Wednesday. So we have a database with all of our like VIP customers, and we have continually sent emails out to them, just giving them updates. We also, since we have a bowling component to what we do, we have bowling leagues. So we have been communicating with the leagues through the, you know, the league administrators. But it was really helpful to us because, of course, Georgia opening first was hugely controversial, especially since the governor named bowling in with the tattoo parlors and, you know, everything that he was opening. So immediately, our owners were really excited. They called me immediately and said, "Did you hear the news tonight?" And I got really scared that they were going to jump right in like the first day and open up, but they did not do that. And we've taken a good 2.5 weeks to get a better plan together. Of course, we've been doing it all along, but when that announcement came out, they put out an email about, hey, this is what we've been doing. This is how we're cleaning. This is what we're doing to get ready to reopen. And it was received really negatively.
Oh, wow.
Probably 95, 98% of the responses to that email came back. I can't believe you're opening. You're idiots. You're killing people, blah, blah, blah. It was really strong, really, you know, in a negative way, strongly received. But that was really good for them to hear because we had not announced a date to open, but that made them push it back. So when we open tomorrow, that will be 2 full weeks after we could have opened. We took time to train have all of our ops teams come in with a thorough training. I have changed everything from top to bottom, how we are dealing with the guests, what we're doing, the social distancing putting in place. And so it's been great. So that communication has gone out in waves. Now the second wave saying, we are not opening up immediately. This is what we're doing. This is what will be in place. That was received a lot positively. We've put it out on all of our social media platforms, on our website. location by location. We have 15 open locations, one in that's still being built. So there's been a lot out there. So we have been able to receive a lot of it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, Roxanne, the bullying, we've been fascinating since the get-go on how you're going to put everything in place. So this is really great to hear, and the measures. So tomorrow, is that what you said?
Tomorrow's the day at noon. So the phones are starting to ring. I'm actually the corporate director of sales, but I've taken over answering the phones while we've been down. There have been 2 of us, and it was crickets for a long time, but it's really picking up. There have been a lot of reservations today. Not so much events, although we do, which we're fortunate because we can train on these. Right from the get-go this weekend on Saturday, we do have 3 birthday parties.
Wow.
But other than that, like all of our events, even moving towards all of summer, because a lot of the county parks and recs now know that they're closed down for the summer. So a lot of cancellations. However, there's been excitement about opening tomorrow. So people have been calling in for just lane reservations.
Oh, wow.
Of course, we're at 20% capacity. We have every other lane closed down. We have a thorough training regiment that everyone had to go through, and specific managers are the ones that are in charge of the cleaning in between guests. But I think that the guest, when they come in, are going to be really surprised. We have put up plexiglass screens just at our points of sale. We're not requiring masks of the guests, but we are of the employees. We are doing temperature checks of the employees, and going to the extent of what needs to be done in phase 1. And we're hoping phase 1 doesn't last too long.
Yeah, that's awesome. How has your team responded to that? Like, is everybody on board with the new procedures and kind of jumping right in, or has there been any resistance or questions there?
Well, I was going to, I had just put a little bit on the chat, what people were saying as far as, yes, people that are on unemployment right now, a lot of them are doing better than what they will when they come back to work. However, if you have a server or a bartender or someone who makes a low amount of money and the tips aren't coming in, if they make $300 or less, they still qualify for full unemployment. So they can work and get full employment. And then it goes down from there, but there's partial unemployment is available. So we're trying to bear that in mind. We've called back all of our management team, and they were all required to come back unless there is an extenuating health circumstance. There are obviously issues as to why some of them cannot come back into the center right now. So some are working from home, but we have limited to a handful of hourly employees right now, just to let them benefit as much as they can, because we know that it's going to be slow when we open. We don't know how slow. And we do have a little bit of pulse from other bowling facilities that have opened, but we're full service restaurant, event facility, game room. We're a full family entertainment. So we're not the same as like a Bolero. However, they opened right out of the gate and they have been really, really slow. So, we were trying to watch some of the other FECs that opened as well, just to see what was going on there. And we saw how slow it was. So we're just one by one calling back our key hourly employees. And again, we're bearing in mind, letting them know they can receive partial unemployment and they can, work as well. But we're trying to utilize 40 hours of their time and just one by one call them back. When we do call them back, when we do need them, we have had to make it clear that it will remove them from the unemployment from our end. So they can definitely try to recertify on their own, but that does not mean that they will get the full amount. And you're right, they will get partial through the end of July. And a lot of people at that time, they want to take their chances and just ride it out, but others care about their job and want to get back to work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Roxanne, something you guys mentioned is that you have been preparing for this prior to the announcement. And I'm sure a lot of other people and their businesses are also preparing. Something that we've been talking about on the Triple Seat side is what kind of resources we can offer from an industry perspective, and even when events do pick back up, and it sounds like they already are for some folks, what kind of resources will be useful to our customers. So we actually have another poll just around what kind of resources would be really useful to you all right now, whether it's more just on the business side or specifically on the event side. And I believe that you can click as many options as you'd like with this one. So we'll see what everybody, and we actually do have a handful of things that, you know, we've just been looking into as well that we can definitely share in terms of reopening and examples of what certain folks have put together. And also just the National Restaurant Association I was looking at today has some really great resources on things to be thinking about in the weeks ahead if you are not reopening for a couple of weeks, things to be doing on an ongoing basis, even if you are already open. So definitely recommend everybody checking those out. And Maz, let us know whenever you've got results.
Share them. We had mostly everyone answer.
Awesome. Cool. So it looks like guidelines on reopening would be helpful. It looks like the most popular one was private events post-coronavirus strategies. Definitely something that we'll be sharing. Success stories, and then the next popular was sales and customer outreach templates. Another thing that internally we've been talking about, you know, what we can offer people. We learn a lot on these calls, and just by talking to customers. I know that we might have some like account managers and sales folks on the call from Triple Seat. Have you guys heard anything from customers around what they're doing in terms of strategies or how they're preparing?
Hi, it's Chelsea. So we're in a little bit of a different boat being out. So I'm based in Vegas, but having the West Coast because things are opening up a little bit slower over here. So I think really we're kind of, I know specifically for my city, we're kind of waiting to see how the first couple phases are going in the Southeast currently. I do know that some of the, for us, obviously hotels, gaming, casinos, it's a huge source of revenue. So I know one of the major hotel groups has already put in like the thermo, I don't know the correct terminology, but at the entrances that they basically scan you and they get your body temperature for when you walk in. So things like that. I know with the gaming, they're still trying to figure it out and kind of how it's going to work with hotel groups. And, you know, is it going to be just in-room dining? Will restaurants open? And then they'll be able to get to-go food. So I haven't really heard. I do know that Denver has kind of started to open. So seeing just a little bit of a trickle, but I think it kind of follows suit with a lot of what Holly was saying in terms of, you know, doing everything on timetables and you have 2 seatings and it's masks and it's limited menus and, you know, just really minimizing contact. So last week was really helpful because I've definitely been asked by my customers kind of what, you know, other people are doing. But I think for me, just because we're out here, a lot of people are waiting to see what happens and then they're going to kind of take it as like, this worked, this didn't work, and this is how we're going to follow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We actually had a kind of a similar question from Nicole in the chat. If anyone's restaurant or venue is located within a hotel or a casino, and if there are any ideas to get local business in, is there anyone on the call that's located within a hotel or casino? No, well, we can definitely share if we hear more from customers on that, but yeah, I think that the hotels are in an equally tricky situation. And I know a lot of them are, oh, go ahead.
Lisa, we heard last week, I think, like Chelsea was saying, we had heard last week that we had someone on the call that had a restaurant within a hotel. And I think the thermo scanners is a big thing, if that's the right term. Chelsea, I don't know either. Thermo scanner sounds really good. And also, I think there's a lot of potential contactless check-ins for the hotel piece of it. And I don't know if there's going to be, I mean, Nicole, we know each other. And at Cosmos specifically, I would imagine potentially they'd they dedicate entrances that are just for the restaurants, I would imagine, and versus overlap with either casino or even for hotel. So probably compartmentalizing. I'm assuming that front entrance right by the escalators would be something that they'd have right directly. But I'm sure that this is the conversations that are happening right now, and hopefully we can get more information about how that opens up somewhere east first and relay that to you.
I know that with MGM specifically, because I used to work for the company, that they had implemented already kind of for more convention-based kiosks where people could basically come in, slide their credit card, a key would come out, and then they would be able to go upstairs and check into their room. So I don't know if that's something that they will be implementing a little bit more. I know that they've announced the first 2 hotels that they plan on opening, but I think it just depends on how secure everybody feels with the rules that are going to be, come through. But I would definitely say more contactless, more automated, anything that can just reduce the amount of, people to people. That's definitely something that they would implement.
So I work at a hotel in South Florida at the Four Seasons, so in Surfside. Our restaurants, they don't have direct access, so you wouldn't be able to do that. They also don't have restrooms in the restaurants. A lot of times when restaurants are in hotels, the restaurants may be in another part of the area. So with the restrictions on the hotel, that's kind of guiding it, how it's moving forward at this point. And in South Florida, we're still not open yet, even though other parts of Florida are, we're not open down here.
Interesting. And then we had a question from Chantel. She said, can you remind me of the rebooking projection percentages you made? You mentioned last week we had shared an infographic that kind of talked about what we were seeing in terms of events and then being rescheduled. And Azure just reshared the link in the chat if anyone's curious to see that. And then one other question from Kimberly. Anyone else running into wedding clients that would prefer that they not be considered a social gathering, where our current guidelines are less than 10, phase 2 earliest May 29th, would allow less than 50 people at a gathering, and would rather follow restaurant guidelines of 50% capacity? Is anyone else running into that with wedding clients or even like other social clients?
So I actually just commented on that. So our guidelines actually list what a social gathering is, and weddings are included in it. But the thing I would say to them, I mean, I don't know the size of your space, but for instance, our restaurant, 50 or more would have to be a buyout anyway. So if they are 50 and based on the 50% capacity, they would have to buy out the restaurant. So that would change their minimum. And I think that would be the best way to deal with it. They're going to back down and probably not want to pay that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we actually were going to pivot the conversation, kind of to what people are seeing in terms of private events in addition to just like regular dining. And then, so we have we have a couple polls here, but just to get a feel, but if we want to throw those up, Maz, I can kind of keep rolling with it. We definitely are still seeing leads coming in on the triple seat side. So we can still see that while of course the volume's definitely not anywhere near where it used to be, there are still people who are making requests for private events. And we've talked on previous social hours about if those are mostly social or corporate or a mix. And then like finally, when are people thinking about accepting groups or how you're scheduling? We did see that a lot of events that were previously on the calendar before coronavirus kind of hit actually ended up rescheduling or like picked a future date on the calendar knowing that it might have to be pushed again. Once we get a response in on these, we can kind of see what the pulse is now. But I'd love to kind of hear from the group, like what are your event calendars looking like? Are people still reaching out from a social perspective? Are you hearing anything from corporate? What does it look like for everyone?
I can share the poll results. I think people all put in their answers.
Wow. Yeah, and Eric shared some really cool stats too. Thanks, Eric, on what the leads are just looking like for the triple seat side. So that would be people like filling out the lead forms on your website. Okay, so we see that over 3/4 of the folks are still receiving leads. That's awesome. That's really encouraging. And then it looks like the majority are either social or a mix. I think that also makes sense. Like a lot of businesses probably aren't sure what they should be doing right now. And then when it comes to when you're booking, it looks like the majority of you guys are actually starting to accept in June and July, and then it kind of goes down from there. But what let's hear from some folks on kind of like what private events are looking like in your space, whether you're still booking them or how you're handling things. Let's see, Whitney just shared. Whitney said, this is Whitney in Nashville. Oh, I see. Okay, so with a bunch of different concepts. Random question, we are currently with Gather. Do we know when the merge will take place between Gather and Triple Seat? So actually, Whitney, you can move over to Triple Seat now if you want, so we can reach out to you about that via email. But yeah, I think that, I can at least share from what I'm seeing. I have a couple of friends that are had to move their weddings, which is so tough. And brides can also be brides and family can be really hard to work with. But it's been really interesting to kind of see what timeframes people feel comfortable, and also how people are adjusting to having to potentially limit the size of their group. And just being able to be flexible and work with those folks, I think is awesome. It's what will kind of help maintain a positive relationship for whenever they can come back in. See, I know I saw someone, I'm gonna do a little call out here. Katie, who is with Triple C. Katie, I know that you used to be actually manage events with the restaurant group. Do you have any friends who are still kind of in doing the private events and what have you heard from them?
So I've got a couple of friends who have actually been furloughed. So they're kind of in a bad spot because, they're furloughed, they're not supposed to be working, but they are getting, somebody has to be handling the rescheduling right now. And I think there's still a lot of questions for the restaurants as well as for the guests on when do you reschedule? Since we just don't really know, it could be soon, or maybe it needs to wait till a little bit further out. I also have some friends though, like you were mentioning about weddings. I have two weddings that were supposed have been held so far that have had to reschedule, and they've both had very different experiences in that regard too. One of them was able to reschedule their wedding to August and keep everything exactly the same, all the same vendors, same location, everything. I have another friend who is having a big struggle with that because there's essentially the fall was already booked up, and they're not able to find that perfect mix of getting their venue and their vendors. So there's definitely, I think, a lot of challenges in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing that can be complicated, like you mentioned with vendors, is it's even if your space is reopened, some of the vendors that you worked with, whether they're preferred or if people are allowed to bring their own stuff in, might not work out. So it adds kind of an extra layer of complexity there.
And Lisa and Katie, I think it also creates opportunity, right? We've covered this on some of the calls where off days that you might not have considered become maybe at a lower price point because, but then it gives an opportunity to, once the fall hits and you're pretty sure you're going to be open, to offer that Friday instead of that Saturday. And who knows, it's not your ideal scenario, but you're dying to get married this year, or you already had X booked, so I think creating those either social media or email campaigns that kind of suggest that or can offer that at some sort of, might be one way to go about it. And I think, Marissa, do you want to chime in here with anything? How's Zuma handling the private event inquiries right now?
Sure. Marissa with Zuma. So we are actually in Boston, New York City, Las Vegas, and Miami, just for those of you that don't know. We were really flexible with all the rescheduling as much as we could be. We were very aggressive in reaching out first right off the bat, as soon as we knew in New York that, well, obviously nothing really happened after March. But we knew in May there weren't going to be groups. We knew that nothing was going to be over groups of 50. We immediately reached out to anybody that was booked until July and said, if you're over 50, do you want to reschedule? Like, where are you at? We'll let you reschedule. And we tried to keep everything, honestly, within the 2020 fiscal year for all shops. Those that were in specifically Las Vegas, even Boston, a lot of our cancellations and reschedulings were social graduations. A lot of Las Vegas was convention business. So we did reflex with those dates and extended them within hopefully a year out to June 2021. Use it or lose it, equal or greater value on or before. We were really flexible in that with all of our dates. And right now, kind of the business that's coming in is few and far between. It's definitely not as much as obviously we would want it to be, but we're really grateful to have 1 or 2 leads in each property, if that. In New York, for example, we had a client ask for a contract for June 1st, June, I want to say 8th for first birthday, 20 to 30 people. We're like, it's probably maybe not going to happen. It may need to be pushed. You might not even be able to have that many people. We might have to give you an extra room for free because we need to give you extra space to distance everybody. But if they're asking for it, we're sending it out and saying in a writing, in email, without adjusting our terms and conditions directly. We're saying, of course, you can, we'll revisit this once the government decides what the proper procedures are to follow along with the CDC and WHO guidelines. With that, we also do have, because we don't have a pandemic mention in our, I think it was in the, there's a part in your terms and conditions. Kelly Veazey, I know you're on this call. Jump in with me if you're here. She's our Associate Director of Events in New York. But there's a part where a pandemic insurance term kind of, for lack of a better term.
Added in. I'm here.
Thank you.
It's the term that basically is like, if there's an act of God or anything of that sort, that will then be added in. And that's what a lot of clients are now requesting is added in, is the pandemic clause. So,
or like indemnification. And we didn't really have anything to that degree. So force majeure, Whitney, thank you. Exactly. All those things. We were really protected in a kind of crazy lawyer way where she really set us up so that we didn't fall into these traps, if you will, not traps, but where we didn't get caught in the business where we couldn't say, we can technically keep your money, but we won't because of obviously what's going on. So we also have a term that's added to our cancellation policy right now when requested that says, I think it's like a sentence of basically what Kelly was saying, should a pandemic happen in the future, you can reschedule this. Unless Zuma has to cancel it, then Zuma, will of course refund all the funds. So I think all of those things were really helping us be compassionate to all of our clients' needs, and reschedule or refund if we really needed to, because some of those people will come back and rebook, but they needed that $2,500 deposit to keep their payroll going or whatever it may have been at that point. But we are taking all inquiries. I think I left New York City. I have a neighbor here who is now a big executive at HSBC. And I said, what's going on with entertaining? Like, what is even happening? He said, nobody's entertaining, nobody's doing anything. And the big change is really that they're seeing the productivity in their offices has gone sky high working from home, which is really debunking that theory that people working from home are not as productive. So he doesn't even know that they're going to need to be doing those things except for in terms of client entertainment. And that won't happen until it gets to a place where there's like a vaccine or something that's going on. And the people that need to entertain and things that are still being discussed such as holiday parties are being discussed, but nobody's able to pull the trigger and pay that deposit until we really know, is it going to come back in a resurgence in the fall? Is it kind of hybrid with another flu strain? Like, what's really going to happen and how is that going to affect everything, and how are we going to plan accordingly with that? So from a New York, Miami, Boston, Las Vegas standpoint, that's kind of what we're doing. But I think we were one of the lucky ones to keep, I'd say 90 to 95% of all of our bookings to reschedule throughout all the properties, with 5 to 10% either canceling or being refunded, or we gave them a gift card so that at least they came back and said, listen, you don't want to come back for an event. We really didn't want to refund as much as we could. So we said, we'll give you a gift card plus some money. Come back, dine whenever you want, dine at any of these properties, transfer it at. And it was helpful for us. I don't know, Kelly, if there's anything you think that I missed, I would love to have you add in there.
No, I think you covered everything. I agree with you that, and the clients that I've spoken to in the past couple of weeks, they're all saying the exact same thing. PwC, Oak Hill Advisors, like a lot of them are just, they're on a complete halt. And even in the regards of like when I asked about what they're doing in terms of like future bookings, there's no movement. Like everything is just like they're talking about what events will happen, but under no discussion of like when those events will actually be planned for. So, but everything else you said, you covered.
Yeah, and I think for Kelly and I, it was really a personal touch and outreach to those clients that we knew and could really reach out and just say, hey, how are you? I have a December repeat buyout client. I know her mother is ill. I know she almost didn't make the holiday party because her mother was ill. And I had that contract pending for, almost 6 figures for a December buyout. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't reach out and be like, hey, by the way, I would really love that $45K deposit in the middle of Corona pandemic. By the way, is your mother doing okay? So there were definitely, I think, personalized ways that Kelly and I and our team, when we were able to have them, unfortunately, most all are furloughed in New York, but when we had them, everybody really reached out and said, like, how are you doing? It wasn't really like, hey, do you want any more business? It was like, we're going to hold this. We're going to make it work for you at a future date. Whatever you need, let us know. Let us know how you're doing, and we'll be in touch. And I think a really smart thing that Zuma helped us to set up was the interdepartment communication and the handoff, so that if Kelly and I are lucky enough to be off furlough, we are just received that PPP loan for that second round of applications for Zuma and Incognito and Ataru. So all of our properties, we're really grateful for that. But when we were intermittently furloughed, if I wasn't answering, Kelly was answering. And if Kelly wasn't answering, I was answering. And it really made sure that nothing and nobody went unanswered, which I think was really appreciated, because somebody always got an email back no matter what city they were in. And I think that's half the battle, is most clients just want a response.
Yeah. And I mean, like everything you just said there in terms of like reaching out to people and just even checking in, I think that's like, it's so needed right now, just having like being a human about it. Right. I mean, it is business, but like just being able to reach back out to people and say like, how are you doing? We're going to work with you. We want to make this work. And really even just giving them a reply, I think that goes a long way. So we've got actually like a pretty active chat going here, and I'd love to bring it live. But Chantel had asked if anyone was discounting F&B minimums this year or in Q4. Love to hear about, Kimberly, I know you shared a little bit, and Holly, I'd love to hear if we can like share live how you guys are handling discounts and deposits in terms of F&B or just like taking deposits for events.
We're still taking deposits and handling them as we have been per our contract. Knock it off!
I can relate to that.
I always know when my neighbors are smoking. It's amazing. So we've been handling the same way. A little bit to piggyback on what Marissa was talking about. We did update our force majeure. We didn't actually have one before. We never needed it, never had a problem with it. We updated it, but I went back and forth with our lawyer team, and I did not like putting in the word pandemic, just because I've never been through one before. Is there a time where they all of a sudden say pandemic's over and we know we could go back to normal? I feel like that was a really, really broad word. So instead we put the word quarantine. So if there's a safer at home or something like that, we're doing that. So that way it gives us a little more wiggle room, because here's the thing. We know where groups are right now. A lot of companies aren't going to allow them to travel the rest of the year. We have no idea what 2021 is going to be like. I already have some 2021s on the books. I don't want them coming back and canceling and getting out of that, $5,000 deposit because they're calling it a pandemic and that was never lifted, but the world is pretty much back to how it is. So we went back and forth on that a lot. So I just want to piggyback on you with that word. You know, everybody's different, but I went back and forth with my lawyer team on that because we finally came up with the quarantine because I think that's a much easier way for us to control it as well as the client to control it, but rather than, you know, the big word. But yeah, Kimberly and I were going back and forth because she was asking about the weddings and the 50%, what we had talked about prior with a buyout. And hers is an interesting situation because they are a wedding venue that can host up to 300. So 50%, they could do a wedding of 50, but if the phase is gatherings of 50 or less, how do you deal with that? And what I said to her was to get with the health department because they're the ones that are dealing with the phases. And I think they're the best ones to help her with how to guide what's right and wrong.
Yeah, definitely. And Chantel, what are you guys kind of thinking in terms of discounting food and beverage minimums and still taking deposits? Oh, I think you're on mute right now. Let me see.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's tough to have dedicated spaces for private events, and then we have much higher food and beverage minimums in certain places where it's general dining on our busy nights. And if you want that room private instead of general dining, there's a lost revenue that has to be made up. And so it gets tricky for those rooms because I can't discount them because I'm actually giving up sales during fourth quarter when we're trying to regain what we've lost, right? But in the rooms that we have as dedicated in the for private events, I can see, was it Kimberly that said you're going to discount 50%? Is that right? I think it is.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think it's brilliant to just put it out there. I mean, quite frankly, it's $1 that I'm not going to have, so why would I not? So I think that makes the most sense, and I really do think that's what I'll implement. We have chosen not to take deposits right now, but got to tell you, Holly, after listening to you a little bit, you know, a lot of this is going away until next year. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to see the projected percentages that you guys put out in that graph.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's going to be that low, I would be foolish not to discount. And after thinking this through, I'd be foolish not to go ahead and take a deposit. And then in the clause, use quarantine and give them, as Marissa is saying, right? You've got a year. What were the other two things you said, Marissa?
We did a year, use it or lose it, equal or greater value.
Got it.
For a certain date. We did gift cards with a plus value if they didn't want to use it within the event. Like, I'm not going to do an event. But then the business was like, okay, let's not lose that. Let's
Right.
so much. If you paid $1,000 deposit, I'm going to say you can either refund the deposit less the 6% processing fee, because we do all of our payments through Triple C, which is obviously connected through Stripe. And then, or we'd say, or you keep your we'll keep your $1,000 deposit, transfer it to a gift card, and give you an extra $250.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Huh. I like that. Right now, we just have if you cancel, it's a 20% per person cost that's assessed to the card on file based on the minimum and based on the guest count.
We are a non-refundable 50% deposit due upon signing, and we changed that when I joined. We also don't have a force majeure or mutual indemnification. We have approved mutual indemnification verbiage should it be requested, because how hard our contracts are written, it's requested all the time. So we just got a set of like verbiage that we could pop in as needed. But I love how Holly said she did not use the word pandemic. She used the word quarantine. It really changes legal language and the coverage. And I think that that's something that I'll definitely bring up to our legal team, like when we recross that bridge and change our, you know, if we need to change and revisit our pandemic quarantine verbiage as needed to the terms and conditions, because I think a lot of people learned a lot within this deposit refunding world of really the unknown that we all kind of figured out how to navigate as best as we could.
Well, I don't know if you guys are up for it, Holly and Marissa, but I would love to see a few of those paragraphs that talk about the quarantine clause and then your use it or lose it clause, just for verbiage. Would you guys be looking to hear it?
Yeah, I would like the use it or lose it clause too, Marissa. So
that's just.
I'll put my email in the chat. If y'all want to email me, we can have a little group chat. That'll be great.
You guys just loop me in. It's just a verbiage that I've kind of cultivated over the years and our team uses, where I say, excellent, okay, you want to reschedule your June 11th, engagement party? We will allow you to use or lose your deposit towards an event of equal or greater value on or before such and such a date. They are then locked into using or losing that deposit. Like if this is a December event, what if it was December? That's a $90,000 minimum. You can reschedule that in July, but it's not going to be less than $90,000.
Right.
I want to make sure that revenue it stays within. We do a PACE report and we report weekly, and we really want to know, and we use our Triple Seat, which we love, and they customize some fields for us. So we have minimum spends and we pull our BEO figures, and then we pull our close numbers, and we really compare, what are we projecting based on our inquiries, our prospects, if you will, what are tentatives, and we try not to over project for that. And then what do we close at? How much do we really, if we start a month with X amount of dollars, what do we close the month at, and what's that growth look like? So we're really tight with our reporting in that way, and we live and die by our Triple Seat calendar in that way, because it transfers to our financials. And I think that that's kind of the same way that we do our reschedulings, and that's the verbiage we use so that we still keep that financial money. Like, obviously we try to keep it within certain periods, whether it's first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. If it's a normal rescheduling situation, we try to use it or lose it before the end of our fiscal November month, for example. But it really depends, and that way we don't also sell space that we could have already sold to somebody else at a higher price as well.
Yeah, on that note, there actually was a question from Kelly that says, for discounted minimums, how is everybody considering the quantity of guests in regards to the new amount of space when quoting the minimums? Does anyone have any recommendations there?
So we're actually doing a case-by-case basis. We actually met with a team via Zoom the other day, and kind of have decided that we are going to lower the minimums. At this point, we'd rather have the space booked than not. I'd rather get something rather than the space sit empty. And then we will, if someone kind of is hesitating on the price, then we will kind of reevaluate based on how many guests. But at this point, we're just making them really attainable so that we book the space.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, and then one more question for the group here from Howie. He said, no one's mentioned this yet, maybe wishful thinking, but for anyone in states opening dining, Vermont opens doors May 15th. Many people like myself expect a second wave, possibly shutting everything down again. Is anyone prepared, or is anyone preparing or planning just in case? So yeah, for anyone already reopening or planning to reopen, is there something in your plan that addresses what would happen if maybe in the fall or winter there is another shutdown? Or are you guys kind of tackling one thing at a time in terms of getting the business back up and running?
No, because it's not going to happen. The world's all better. It's going to be all better. Stop thinking negative.
Quantum physics, good karma. There is no more rebounds. We're good.
Wear your mask. Wash your hands. We're going to be fine.
Okay, Howie, got your answer there. Yeah, I totally agree. It's like, obviously those things totally could happen, but I feel like personally, like just as someone who's looking forward to going back out and seeing people in small social gatherings, like one step at a time. So I agree with that perspective. Do we have any other questions on the call today before we kind of wrap things up here?
Oh, wait.
Can we,
I would like
is
to-
this the last week? Are we going to keep doing these?
Oh, we are keeping doing these, Holly, and you better show up every week.
You better start paying me. Triple C needs to start paying me.
We need to send Holly some swag.
Yeah.
Whitney's already on it. We've already talked. I'm waiting for my Triple C onesie for the baby. That's what I want.
I'd like to know if anybody whose company who originally applied for the PPP did not get it, applied the second round, and is now back because of it. Is anybody in that boat with us?
We were one of the lucky ones. We were one of the first ones in line, and man, they turned around those checks quick. So I'm super grateful.
It's awesome.
That's good. I guess that's good and bad for everyone. Some people didn't need it. Some people haven't gotten it.
So Chantel and Stars and Strike also got it in the first shot. That's great.
That's awesome. All right. Well, yeah. So if you guys have any suggestions, we shared a survey in the chat farther up, but we'll definitely send it out to everybody in a follow-up. But if you have any suggestions on new topics, or if we want to just continue the conversation on reopening, I'm sure it'll be woven into future social hours, as it's pretty much top of mind for everyone. If you're not already open, you're preparing to reopen, or following along with those who are and what's working. Definitely let us know. And also in the coming weeks, we'll start to share some more resources on the event side. You know, what people are doing that's working really well, templates for reaching out to prospects or to folks who are already on the books, and then just more guides to kind of give you some resources as you continue to navigate these crazy times. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to some of our folks who continue to speak up on these webinars and share what's working, share your strategies. It's super valuable. And I hope everyone has a great week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks all.